This is a reading from the diary of Saint Gemma Galgani. Preface. To my dear father, who will burn it immediately. My dear father, you must understand that at first I intended to make a general confession of my sins without adding anything else. But your guardian angel reproved me and told me to obey and give a short summary of all that has happened in my life, both good and bad. How difficult it is, dear father, to obey in this matter. But please, be careful. You may read and reread this as often as you wish, but do not show it to anyone else. And when you are through with it, burn it up immediately. Do you understand? The angel promised to help me recall everything to mind. I told him plainly and pleaded with him that I do not want to do this. I was frightened at the thought of recalling everything, but the angel assured me that he would help me. I think, dear Father, that when you read this and learn of all my sins, you will be angry with me and will no longer want to be my father. Still, I hope that you will always be willing. So prepare yourself to learn of every kind of sin. And you, dear Father, do you approve of what the angel told me that I should speak of my whole life? That's his order, and I take for granted that that is what is in your mind and heart. By my writing everything, both good and bad, you will be able to see better how bad I have been and how good others have been to me. You will see how ungrateful I have shown myself toward Jesus and how much I have failed to listen to the good advice of my parents and teachers. So I begin the task, dear Father. Live, Jesus. Earliest memories. Her mother. The first thing I remember is that when I was a little girl, not 7 years old, my mother used to take me into her arms, and often when she did this, she cried and said to me, I have prayed so much that Jesus would give me a little girl. He has given me this consolation. It is true, but too late. I am ill, she would say to me, and I must die. I must leave you. Oh, if I only could take you with me. Would you come? I understood very little of this, but I wept because I saw my mother weeping. And where are you going? I asked her. To heaven with Jesus and the angels, she replied. It was my mother, dear Father, who first made me want to go to heaven when I was just a little child. And when I still show this desire, I am reprimanded and receive an emphatic no for an answer. But when my mother asked me this, I told her that I did want to go with her, and I remember that when she spoke so often of taking me to heaven with her, I did not want to be separated from her. I would not even leave her room. The doctor forbade me to go near mother's bed, but such a command was useless, for I did not obey. Every evening, before going to bed, I would go to her, and kneeling beside her bed, I would say my prayers. One evening, she had me add to the usual prayers a De Profundis to the souls in purgatory, and 5 Glorias to the wounds of Jesus. I said these prayers, but as usual, carelessly and without attention. All my life, I have never paid attention to my prayers. I made a great show over it, complaining to my mother that these were too many prayers to say, and I didn't want to say them. And she, indulgent as she was, shortened the prayers after that. Confirmation. Her mother in heaven. Meanwhile, the time was coming when I was to receive confirmation. I wanted to take some instructions because I knew nothing. But bad as I was, I would not leave my mother's room, and every evening a catechist had to come to our house where I took the instructions in the presence of my mother. On the 26th of May, 1885, I received confirmation, but I did so weeping, for after the function there was to be a mass, and I was always afraid that mother would go away, die, without taking me with her. I assisted at the mass as best I could, all the while praying for her. All of a sudden I heard a voice in my heart saying to me, Are you willing to give your mother to me? Yes, I answered, if you will take me too. No, replied the voice, give me your mother willingly, but you must remain with your father for the present. I will take your mother to heaven, understand? Do you give her to me willingly? I was forced to give my consent. When the mass was over, I ran home. Oh my God, I looked at mother and wept. I simply could not contain myself. 2 more months passed. I never left her side, but finally my father, who feared that I would die before mother, forced me to leave one day and took me to the home of my mother's brother, who lived near Lucca. Father, dear father, such was my lot. What a torture it was. I did not see anyone, neither my father nor my brothers. I learned that my mother died on September 17th of that year. at St. Gennaro with her uncle. My life was changed when I went to live with my uncle. My aunt was there, but she was in no way like my mother. She was good and religious, but was interested in the church only to a certain point. I had formerly complained that my mother had made me pray too much, but all the time that I was with my aunt, I could not even go to confession, which I wanted so much. I had been to confession only 7 times, and I wanted to go every day after the death of my mother. My mother had made me go every week after my confirmation. My aunt decided to keep me as her daughter, but my brother, who is now dead, learned of it and would not allow it. So on Christmas Day, I returned to my family and lived with my father, my brothers, my 2 sisters, one of whom I did not know because she had been taken away shortly after her birth, and 2 servants. What consolation I experienced on returning to my family and being out of the hands of my aunt. She wanted the best for me, but I wanted none of it. My father then sent me to school at the Institute of St. Zeta, which was conducted by nuns. During the time when I was with my aunt, I was always bad. She had a son who was always tormenting me, pulling my hands behind me. One day, when he was on a horse, 15 hands high, my aunt told me to take him some kind of a coat to put on. I took it to him, and when I was near, he pinched me. Then I gave him a hard push, and he fell off and hurt his head. In punishment, my aunt tied my hands behind me for the entire day. Thus mistreated, I got very angry, and I told him so with strong words. I even threatened to get even, but did not do so. The School of St. Zeta, First Communion, 1887. I started to school at the nuns' school, and it was heaven for me. I immediately expressed my desire to make my first communion, but they found me so bad and so ignorant that they discouraged me from it. They began, however, to instruct me and to give me much good advice, but I only became worse. Nevertheless, my only desire was to make my first communion soon, and they, knowing how strong was my desire, granted my request before long. The nuns used to have the children make their first communion in the month of June. The time had come, and I had to ask my father's permission to enter the convent for a short time. My father, who was indisposed, did not grant me permission, but I knew a very clever way to make him let me do anything, so I used it and got the permission at once. Every time my father saw me weeping, he would grant me whatever I wanted. I cried, otherwise I would not have received the permission. In the evening he gave it, and early the next morning I went into the convent, where I remained for 15 days. During this time I saw none of my family, but how happy I was. What a heaven it was, dear Father. Once inside the convent, I found it to my liking, and ran to the chapel to thank Jesus. I begged him fervently to prepare me for Holy Communion, but I also had another desire besides this. When I was a little girl, my mother used to show me the crucifix and tell me that Christ died on the cross for men. Later on, my teachers taught me the same thing, but I had never understood it. Now I wanted to know all about the life and passion of Jesus. I told my teacher of this desire, and she began, day by day, to explain these things to me, choosing for this a time when the other children were in bed. She did this, I believe, without the Mother Superior's knowing of it. One evening, when she was explaining something to me about the crucifixion, the crowning with thorns, and all the sufferings of Jesus, she explained it so very well that a great sorrow and compassion came over me, so much so that I was seized immediately with fever so intense that I was forced to remain in bed all the next day. From that day on, the teacher explained such things only briefly. These nuns caused me some disquiet. They wanted to inform my father that I had contracted the fever, but it did cause a lot of trouble, not only for me, but for them, and for the whole convent. This happened especially during the 10 days of the retreat. With 11 other children, I began the retreat on the 9th day of June. Father Raphael Ciannetti preached the retreat. All the children devoted themselves eagerly to prepare well to receive Jesus. Among so many, only I was very negligent and distracted. I gave no thought to changing my life. I listened to the sermons, but very soon forgot what I heard. Often, even every day, that good Father said, "He who eats of Jesus will live of his life." These words filled me with much consolation, and I reasoned with myself. Therefore, when Jesus comes to me, I will no longer live of myself, because Jesus will live in me. And I nearly died of the desire to be able to say these words soon. Jesus, live in me. Sometimes I would spend whole nights meditating on these words, being consumed with desire. Finally, the day I wanted so much arrived. The day before, I wrote these few lines to my father. Dear Papa, today is the vigil of my first Holy Communion, a day of great joy for me. I write these lines to assure you of my affection and to beg you to pray to Jesus that the first time he comes to me, he may find me disposed to receive all those graces that he has prepared for me. I beg your pardon for all the displeasures and all the disobedience that I have been guilty of, and I beg you this evening to forget all these things. Asking your blessing, I am your affectionate daughter, Gemma. I prepared myself with much work on the part of those good nuns for my general confession. I made it in 3 sessions to Monsignor Volpi. I finished it on Saturday, the vigil of that happy day. Finally, Sunday morning came. I arose early and ran to Jesus for the first time. At last, my desires were realized. I understood for the first time the promise of Jesus. He who eats of me shall live of my life. Dear Father, I do not know how to tell what passed between Jesus and me at that moment. Jesus made himself felt very strongly by my poor soul. I understood at that moment that the delights of heaven are not like those of the earth. I felt myself overcome by the desire to render that union with my God continual. I felt weary of the world more and more disposed to recollection. It was that same morning that Jesus gave me the great desire to be a religious.